Sean Diddy Combs, jury selection, 3 days in. This is getting interesting. And I think also, let me bring up this image because I think sometimes things are really quite profound in the timing of them. And let me just find this, just find my image here that I wanted to bring up because I do think it's interesting. There it is. So it's interesting to me that jury selection for Diddy's trial started on the same day as the Met Gala. Met Gala is an annual event that Diddy and his main accuser, Cassie, were once regular attendees and treated as the second coming. This is from a Met Gala. This is Cassie, who is the US government's star witness against Diddy, of course, based on the now infamous video where she was alleged to have been running away from the so-called freak-offs, the orgies, and he ran down a hotel corridor and he was kicking her and dragging her back. And his team have said that that has been manipulated, but we know for a fact that after that was released, like almost 10 years on, because money had been handed over to people at the hotel to stop that video from surfacing. But when it did eventually surface, and then it did lead to the criminal charges, but he came out and he was like beside himself. That's not me. I'm not that kind of man. He never once denied doing it. Never once. So that in itself, I thought was problematic, frankly. Let me just remove that. But I think it's really interesting what is going on in the jury selection. So what they've done is they've whittled the jury now down from close to 200, and they're hoping to get to the sort of magic 45 mark today. I've been reading the indictment against him. It includes allegations of trafficking, of beatings, of prostitution, of attacks when people wouldn't do as Diddy told them to do. But it would appear that his defense in all of this is that he's a swinger. I think the big push that his team are going for is that this was his lifestyle. He wasn't involved in abusing anybody or trafficking anybody or prostituting anybody, but these were willing participants who took part in these so-called freak-offs. And this is how it works in the music industry. Well, here's the thing is that, yeah, in part, it's true. There's an awful lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the music industry. That's a fact, right? But that's literally not what people who are suing Diddy and what people are saying in this criminal case. But we shall see. It was interesting on Monday. There was a moment when he asked if he could go to the loo. And this is only like an hour and a half into jury selection. And he actually turned around and said, "I'm nervous." Now, I talked to a psychologist friend of mine and I asked for some feedback on that. And it was really interesting what she had to say. And she said to me, that's interesting because immediately it makes him relatable in the eyes of the jury. It humanizes him, to say that I'm nervous and people, the potential members of the jury may well have, like felt protective of him by saying that. Now, I wouldn't put any of that past him. I've met him twice and he's an extremely, extremely charming individual, is Sean. Absolutely. And also he's now allowed to wear his own clothes. And this is not a special privilege for him. This is something that defense teams often ask for, because if prisoners, on remand rock up in court in their prison garbs, it creates an air immediately of guilt. So he's allowed to wear his own clothes. A lot of names are starting to pop up who are potentially going to be named in court, such as obviously Cassie, Mike Myers, Michael Jordan, J-Lo. And it doesn't mean that any of these people will be at the trial or that they're implicated. None of that. He's also, of course, he's turned down plea deals. And so this would suggest that he believes he can either convince the jury or that he might actually have the tools or the facts at his disposal to prove that he is innocent. So that's interesting. But I don't think anybody should be under any illusion whatsoever. This is a significant trial. This is such a significant trial in so many respects, and there is much to emerge from it. And it's actually a huge thing in terms of popular culture and more. He's influenced music, he's influenced fashion for decades. He is not a small player. He rose high. And now, is that because he is especially talented, or because so many other influential people are compromised by him and his sexual proclivities? People possibly in politics and in Hollywood. And I was listening to a discussion about the implications of it. One commentator noted that hip hop for a long time had normalized underage sex. And it's true. As a former hip hop journalist, he's right. Hip hop was frequently used and has been over the last couple of decades now. When I was writing about hip hop, it was right at the start of it, late 80s, 90s. And it was old school stuff. And you had artists like Public Enemy and A Tribe Called Quest and Jungle Brothers and Queen Latifah, all of whom I have interviewed. And then you had a lot of the kind of gangster rap that was coming through, and some of it was authentic and some of it was clearly part of an agenda. And what we now have is that hip hop has now been absolutely used as a vehicle in which to launch numerous agendas. But I still maintain that the original intention of hip hop was organic, was pure. It wasn't an agenda. It was impoverished kids hanging out on street corners in the US, in New York, and in play parks, amusing themselves with their skills and talents, including rapping and breakdancing. But then the money men spotted a way in, not only to make a fortune from it, but to use hip hop and rap as a vehicle for a degenerative society. And corporate hip hop put some of the lowest behavior at the top of the agenda to influence young people. These days, if you look at females in hip hop, heavily sexualized, ruled by ex-strippers and women who will shed their clothes at the drop of a record executive's request. I mean, it's just horrible, horrible stuff, really degenerative stuff. Degenerative stuff. So I do think that this is substantial. He's had a major influence, a major influence.
It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.